Glimmer of Genius, 4 Hieroglyphic Illumination, 1 Metallurgic Summonings, and 3 Blue Gear Hulks.
And that's a big declaration there, playing more Illumination than Glimmers. There's no energy payoffs outside of Harness Lightning in the deck, but Illumination's ability to cycle is very powerful.
Yeah, this is pretty close to a blue-red control deck, at least in Game 1. See players just trading lands on the first 2 turns. No cheap threats out of the Mardu deck in his opening hand. Sometimes you'll see Toolcraft Exemplars, Thraben Inspectors.
That's a sigh of relief for Adrian. His deck, he does have 4 Censors and 3 Negates, 3 Disallows as well. The longer you take to get on the board, the better the game looks for him.
Yeah, and right now players just continue to trade lands. Looks like Bernard's first play may be a Gideon.
This would be a great spot for Censor.
Yeah. And he will try for Gideon, ally of Zendikar. Some sort of counterspell likely to come from Adrian, and it will be Censor, really the most punishing one on this board.
That does never feel good.
Had a chance a couple rounds ago to watch Bernard Liberati on Mardu vehicles. He, coming into the standard rounds here, was 11-1. So has been 0-2 in the standard section today. Played a very tough 3 games in round number 13. It did not come away with the win, however.
And he has some cards in his hand that don't line up particularly well in the matchup. At least 1 copy of Unlicensed Disintegration.
Here's Walking Ballista. He's going to tap out to try again. And that's one that Adrian actually can let resolve, as you see he's going to do here. It's a 4-drop that's answerable by something like Magma Spray. It's pretty nice. You see Adrian will actually let it resolve and just cast Hieroglyphic Illumination with his 4 mana, netting him a card.
Right, and then Adrian, he does have these 3 Magma Sprays, 4 Harness Lightning, plenty of outs, 2 Sweltering Suns in the main deck as well.
And there's the Magma Spray, the 1 mana answer to Bernard's 4-drop. So 2 damage will shoot upstairs, but what a great spot here for Adrian. He gets to, on Bernard's end step, cast a draw 2. This turn he gets to remove the threat and set up the mana to cast another draw 2.
It was his land entering the battlefield tap there. It wasn't a window where he could have had Torrential Gearhulk anyway, so things are looking very good for Sullivan.
Yeah, and remember, Mardu, as the mid-range deck of the format, can be caught with hands that don't always match up well against their opponent. You see as Bernard casts Gideon here, the backup for this Gideon is pretty light. We have Fatal Push, Unlicensed Disintegration, cards that don't work well here. So it means when Adrian disallows this Gideon, as just happened, Bernard doesn't necessarily have a good follow-up play.
Right. You can disintegrate away a Torrential Gearhulk, so that Fatal Push, it's really just never going to come into play. It is true that Adrian makes tokens off of Metallurgic Summonings when we start going that route, but this is one spot where Lumbering Falls is actually really nice, where you could push a Fumarole. You can't do that to the Falls. And
it seems like with Metallurgic Summonings, that's just the way Adrian is choosing to end the game. It's not actually the way he's winning. How he's winning is once he starts, like once Torrential Gearhulk hits a Glimmer of Genius, that's the play that wins.
Usually feels pretty close to a W. As long as you can manage those Gideons, and he's done an excellent job of that.
See, Bernard no plays on 7 mana. Adrian will cycle a Sweltering Suns on end step.
Cycling your Wrath of God against an aggressive deck is a huge sign of strength.
Right. Let's go back to Sullivan's main phase. You see that Lumbering Falls, showing why we have Teamer control as opposed to blue-red. This really is a blue-red deck with Lumbering Falls. In the main deck, that's exactly what it is.
Right.
And Adrian will restack his lands and then just pass, content to trade land drops. Bernard has the 8th land as well. On his side, that's less inviting. See Adrian going to continue to cycle away these 3 mana sweepers. Now cast Glimmer of Genius. This is a window for Bernard to resolve Avacyn. His hand is Fatal Push, Unlicensed Disintegration, and Avacyn.
It does make sense to go for that Avacyn when you have the shields down. Though now with the Glimmer resolving, Adrian does have enough energy to harness Lightning Avacyn down.
It seems like there's no way that the Avacyn would survive to your untap.
Right.
And Bernard won't even make the 4/4, so passes. And we are likely to see more of this from Adrian. He makes his 8th land drop. 6 cards in hand, 18 life points. Everything is going his way.
And Bernard, he has Needle Spires, Shambling Vent. You just know if you fire those up, they're going to die immediately.
Yeah, at some point, you think he might just make that play because he needs to start trading with the cards in Adrian's hand.
Yeah, well, the real problem is if you don't get a trade, you run into a torrential Gearhulk.
9th land for Bernard. He plays land, says go. Adrian accepts. He'll play a 9th land and say go on his side. And here is the win con. Metallurgic Summonings, a 1-of Mythic in Adrian's deck. Bernard's going to have to read that one, and we are going to here too. This is from Kaladesh.
So it's
almost.
That's not the one. That's not the one. The art is super similar.
We'll get that on the screen in a second for you. In the meantime, Bernard will end step attempt to Avacyn. There were the Summonings. So the 5-man enchantment is nice here. When Adrian casts an instant or sorcery, he'll get an XX artifact creature token, where X is that spell's converted mana cost. So now all these spells will make creatures. You're likely just to see Adrian leave this in play for the rest of the game. In a closer game, he might use its second ability, where for 5 mana, he exiles the enchantment and gets all his instant sorcery cards back from the graveyard, though he does need 3 artifacts to do this, and the only artifacts in his deck are those tokens.
Actually, 6 artifacts.
It's 6?
It's a very
it's
tall
It's double
order.
Metalcraft.
Yeah.
All right, then. So Bernard will attack with Avacyn and Needle Spires. Magma Spray on the Needle Spires. Adrian will get a 1/1 token.
Hashtag value.
At last, the Fatal Pushes are online for Bernard. Not really how he wanted this to happen, however. He's going to Fatal Push. Was that the Needle Spires?
He gestured at the Needle Spires.
We'll confirm on that. With the way Metallurgic Summonings reads, Adrian will actually still... Okay. Oh, no, he does it on purpose. Adrian still gets the 1/1. He wants to flip the Avacyn. That said, Adrian's not going to let it happen. He'll Harness Lightning down the Angel as well, getting a 2/2. No, that's actually a good play on Bernard's side.
Yes. Tried to make it so that his Avacyn was large. You know, you can clean up the tokens that way. If Adrian has a Harness Lightning, it's difficult to imagine winning anyhow. Though
Yeah,
it is very likely that was going to happen.
And lastly for Bernard is Thalia. The Heretic Cathar. Adrian down to, it looks like 3 cards in hand. But you're going to see him fuel up here. Or just Harness Lightning away the Thalia, getting another 2/2.
And this is going to get out of control very quickly. Adrian's deck's full up of cards that they're just instants and sorceries, stuff that redraws. He's already gone through Harness Light, Glimmer of Genius, Hieroglyphic Illuminations. There's plenty more of those in the deck.
Yeah, swings for 3 with the Constructs. Thraben Inspector picked up for Bernard. He'll continue to try to fight through these creatures and really just these kill spells.
Thraben Inspector can be pretty annoying for these blue-red X control decks in the early game. Not at this stage in the game,
And
unfortunately.
Here's a 2-of in Adrian's deck. It's the card Commit to Memory. So this puts target spell or creature second from the top. Yeah, Adrian, get that clue out of here. No, he's doing it when it's on the stack.
Yes. Yeah, no clue token there.
And gets a 4/4. I don't know that we'll see the memory half of this.
No. It would make another token.
It would make a 6/6. I actually kind of like that. I don't want to draw Bernard's 7 cards, though.
Adrian is less interested in a draw 7 than Bernard is.
All right, so yeah, put target spell or non-land permanent into its owner's deck, second from the top. Then if you turn your head sideways, the second half of it, each player shuffles their hand and graveyard into their library, and both players draw a new 7-card hand.
Bernard cashes in that Unlicensed Disintegration. Doesn't have an artifact. Adrian's at 18 anyway.
Yeah.
Gets to kill spells one of the tokens made off of the token-making engine.
Here's 5 damage. Bernard to 12. Adrian will say go. Bernard's top card, that Thraben Inspector. No, second from the top. Second from the top. So this one's going to be Heart of Kiran. The second one will be the Thraben Inspector.
So this is actually worse than Thraben Inspector.
Yeah, this is... Adrian can let this one resolve.
Or he could cast a spell and make a token. The possibilities are endless.
Metallurgic Summoning, among the flashier ways to win out of a blue-red control deck here.
It got some buzz initially when the set was released. Pretty quickly, players decided it was a little bit slow. Part of that was there were a lot more broken cards legal in Standard at that point in time. Commit to Memory was actually a pretty significant pickup for these blue-red decks.
Another Commit to Memory from Adrian on the Heart of Kiran gets Adrian a new 4/4. And you see all those tokens with a Lumbering Falls is an attack for 12.
Yep, that ought to do it.
Yeah, look, we may have one Fatal Push left in Bernard's hand. Yeah, Adrian, that's 9, 10, 11, 12. Looks good. Here's a lethal swing from Adrian Sullivan.
And because of those Commit to Memories, we know that the top card of Bernard's deck is Thraben Inspector. It makes a clue that redraws into that Heart of Kiran that was also put second from the top after that. Bernard does fire up Shambling Vent here, but Adrian has Harness Lightning to take care of that blocker, and that's going to be game number 1 to Adrian Sullivan.
All right, so game 1 will go over to Teamer Control. A really dominating game there for the blue-red control deck. Bernard not able to present an early threat, and once we got into the middle or late game, there was really no competing.
Right, and the first spell that Bernard cast that game was Gideon on turn 4. That got censored immediately. Second Gideon, when he tried to cast that was disallowed. Really couldn't get onto the table with that one. Yeah, Adrian just never fell behind. Bernard really wasn't able to commit anything into there. So Adrian stopped Bernard from getting on the table, kept him off the entire game. Really ran away with it entirely once that Metallurgic Summonings came down as well.
All right, so looking at the sideboards here, we'll go to Bernard Liberati's side first. He does have the classic transformational sideboard that we used to see out of Mardu decks. Fumigates, Oath of Liliana's, Oath of Chandra, Planeswalkers on top of that.
Yeah, so
so that generally we'll see them do that against creature decks. What do you like though about against control decks? Does he still want to go big here?
you do want to have some impactful spells. Really the easiest way to win games is to get ahead and stay ahead when you have the turn 1 Toolcraft Exemplar and the Heart of Kiran. The problem with that, if you get hit by Magma Sprays, you're really in trouble. Planeswalkers, if you're able to resolve them, that's going to be really good. Adrian's definitely going to be leaving those sensors in, so I can really push you off tempo when it comes to those Planeswalkers, so that's going to be beneficial for Adrian. So there's a lot of give and take. You're vulnerable to Sweltering Suns if you stay a small creature deck. Planeswalkers are vulnerable to a different thing.
All right, on Adrian's side, 4 Tireless Tracker, 2 Dispel, 2 Gnarlwood Dryads. You see those 6 green creatures. That's what the green is actually for in his deck. Well, and then one other green creature, the Altered Ego.
This is probably not the Altered Ego matchup.
Commit to Memory, Confiscation Coup, Incendiary Flow, Magma Spray, Overwhelming Denial, and Sweltering Suns, all options out of Adrian's sideboard.
There's some cat and mouse going on here, whether Adrian thinks that Bernard is going to be getting rid of these small creatures and bringing in Planeswalkers. It's going to make a difference for whether he wants Incendiary Flow and Magma Spray versus something like an extra Commit to Memory, which would be better in the other spot. Gnarlwood Dryad is going to be good really against either of those strategies as a way to pressure Planeswalkers or just get in front of the creatures on the ground. And Tireless Tracker can go one way or the other. If you expect just Planeswalkers, it's really going to shine when the deck's trying to outvalue you, and you certainly shouldn't expect removal spells out of Mardu in the sideboarded games.
All right. So players can get ready for a second game. Now, over on the SCG Tour, this season was the first time we ran out the Infinite Challenge package all weekend long at every Open. So what this is if every weekend that we have an Open, we also have the Infinite Challenge. These are a set of events all weekend long in every format. They're 4-round events, each with their own prizes. They're another way to get the playmats other than attending the main event. So if you cannot make both days, or maybe the main event's not in your format, you can get the Infinite Challenge package. This is $80 for 2 days. You get free entry into all challenge events during the weekend, and you get that exclusive playmat. This will be coming back for Season 2. We'll be having it all of 2017.
Can't do much better than that in terms of value for Magic for your weekend. Nice thing about side events, you can just play them all day.
Bernard on the play. Looks like he's going to be taking a mulligan. We'll look over to Adrian Sullivan. His 7. That one's going to work out. Players heading in some opposite directions here. For Adrian Sullivan, he is 6-0 today. Looking for his 7th straight win and securing a spot in the top 8. For Bernard, this would be his 3rd straight loss. Now, he was at 11-1 entering the standard rounds. It's possible he can lose here and still be live. He is in 4th place going into this round.
Would certainly prefer a win, but yeah.
A win, and he's drawing into top 8.
Right. Sullivan does already have that awkward draw.
Yeah, happening with this Teamer control deck. Remember Adrian Sullivan, the perfect 8-0 in Modern, that was with Lantern control. If he wins this, that's the deck we'll be seeing in our top 8 tomorrow. I know that's
untimed round.
An untimed. I mean, everyone's going to be excited about that one. The untimed Lantern, best of 5s. Bernard keeping on 6. Turn 2, Scrap Heap Scrounger. Hoping to dodge Magma Spray if he can. This is a real power card in the matchup.
Yeah, Harness Lightning isn't really expressly going to solve that one. Adrian will be looking for those Magma Sprays or that sideboard Incendiary Flow.
Swing for 3. We do see the pickup that turn from Bernard. Chandra Flamecaller. He has gone bigger out of the sideboard. To add a copy of Thalia, Heretic Cathar. That one will get hit by Harness Lightning.
That's a much more inviting target.
Yeah, that he dodged Magma Spray here is
So
big
far.
for Bernard. I mean, there's probably not one. I think we would have seen it on the...
Yeah.
He can draw one.
Adrian has time to draw one, yeah.
That's true. Adrian, 3rd land in a pass. Double blue up. Representing counters like Disallow, Censor, Essence Scatter, and Negate. And for Bernard, hand is land 4, land 5, Thraben Inspector, and a Chandra, the 6-mana Chandra.
6-mana Chandra is pretty ambitious when you get tagged by Censor in game 1.
And look at this from Adrian. Disallow on Thraben Inspector.
It's a 2-for-1.
That's some big respect for that card.
Part of the argument for that, I assume that Adrian has at least one other counter spell, perhaps multiples. It could be just flush with
So
them.
he just wants to cast one.
There's no Planeswalker you can cast on the same turn as Thraben Inspector on that turn. So it's not a huge risk to it.
Now we see some of the green cyber from Adrian. Tireless Tracker, Cinderglade. He'll get a clue token. This is a bit of a bait and switch here, you know. We saw last game Bernard's hand clogging up with cards like Unlicensed Disintegration and Fatal Push. He'd love to have an Unlicensed Disintegration right now.
Or if that 6-mana Chandra was 4-mana Chandra, little Torch of Defiance, that would work out a lot better here.
Yeah, it looks like one of each actually in his sideboard, so. Right now just has the wrong Chandra for the job. But he still swings in with Scrounger, and that Scrounger has been very powerful here for Bernard. He's gotten Adrian down to 11. He'll pass with Avacyn mana up.
Yeah, we'll see what Sullivan has now. He's able to untap with all of his blue mana. Still has an energy and all of his red mana as well. Potentially has just answers on the ready for an Avacyn. This is still a territory. You know, Bernard just has 5 lands. If Adrian has a Censor, it's great.
Second clue for Adrian. Eventually, this Tireless Tracker, once it becomes a 5/4, can function as a removal spell for Scrap Heap Scrounger.
Right.
And just block. Adrian says go. Bernard's going to try for Avacyn. Ambitious. Will it work?
The no attacks there strongly suggests that Adrian didn't have anything. That makes it more inviting to make the play.
There's that Censor you mentioned again. This Censor in this Mardu matchup has just been an A+.
And I think that Adrian did just kind of get Bernard there. You know, if he has Censor, you would think that he'd be a little more fearless about attacking with a Tireless Tracker, and he baited Bernard into casting that Avacyn for little value right into his Censor there. That was a really good turn of events for Adrian.
So we go over to Bernard's turn. He will activate Needle Spires, and this is a big risk by Bernard. He'll swing both. If Adrian has a kill spell for the land, Bernard is stranding that Chandra in his hand.
This isn't looking good. Okay.
Cycle Hieroglyphic Illumination for Adrian.
That's acceptable.
Yeah, I don't think he hit a removal spell. So now he's either taking 7 and going to 4, or he's trading Tireless Tracker with one of these creatures.
Presumably it would be the Spires. Step 1 would be to crack the clue to see if you have something for the following turn.
Right. He will crack a clue. Tireless Tracker becomes a 4/3. 4/3 means it can actually trade with Needle Spires, and that's what it's going to do. First strike will only deal 2, and regular damage the creatures trade. But Adrian's down to 8. All 12 of these light points of damage have come at the hands of Scrap Heap Scrounger.
This is a spot where Wandering Fumarole would actually function a little bit better than Lumbering Falls. Because it's a 1/4. In a pinch, you can use it to block a Scrap Heap Scrounger for a couple of turns.
So replacement tracker for Adrian. Land, clue, now up to his clue count to 2. Says go. Adrian has 2 mana up. Let me go back to Bernard. His hand was a Chandra Flamecaller going into the turn. He'll start with an attack. See if Adrian wants to trade. There are 3 creatures in the graveyard here. So Adrian will go to 5. Gideon, a huge draw for Bernard. He was Gideon with Censor mana up, but Adrian had other thoughts. Negate cleanly catches the Planeswalker.
Very fortuitous for Adrian to have that negate. I don't think he would have been able to beat that Gideon.
Now another land and a pass with 2 cards. Adrian's down to a low life total of 5, but he now has reached a point that's hesitantly a stable spot. This Tireless Tracker can become big enough to just block the Scrounger.
Yep. 6 mana up and 3 clues. Only takes 2 of them to give that tracker 4 toughness.
Big draw by Bernard. It's basic planes. That means he can cast Chandra Flamecaller this turn. He'll certainly be checking Adrian for a counter spell if he does.
And Adrian has 2 cards in hand, already has the intention to crack 2 clues. A Chandra would be plussing, I have to imagine, to make 3/1s. He wouldn't be able to kill the tracker by minusing it, given that Adrian could get that all the way up to 5 toughness.
No more creature lands in play for Bernard, but here's his last play. It's going to be the Chandra. Does Adrian have the counter spell ready, or is he cracking clues? Let's see. It's some clues. Goes down to 2, draws a card. He's looking for one of his other 2 copies of Negate. Maybe this turn a Disallow would be fine. Commit to Memory, the pickup. Puts Chandra 2nd from top.
This does mean that Adrian will have to trade the tracker or take the hit from the Scrounger on this turn.
Swing, will he go to 2 or will he trade? Adrian thinking the same thing. He reaches for the life pad. Down to 2. It's the 6th hit he's taken from Scrap Heap Scrounger.
Yeah, if at least one of those 2 cards in his hand are a land, definitely makes sense to preserve the tracker, try to dig for better resources.
Well, now he has to worry about cards like Walking Ballista, Chandra Torch of Defiance, an End Step Avacyn. These cards would all end the game were they to resolve.
Yep. You know, really, no matter how he plays it from that spot, he has to draw well from here.
Fortunately, he'll have a lot of draws to work with. Another land for Tireless Tracker was his play. Adrian Sullivan looks like 1 win away here from his an invitational top 8.
Yeah, the difference between 5 and 3 or 5 and 2, it's certainly pronounced. There's cards that are just dead.
Yeah, there's a couple cards like Ballista gets better.
Right. The spot at 5 is still precarious enough.
Yeah.
Where it makes sense to go the other way.
And you see a go from Adrian now. Did not crack any clues end step. What's your read on that?
Reads like a torrential Gearhulk.
I was thinking the same thing. You see a lot of some of the older players. Adrian plays his hand face down on the table. And here's that Chandra Flamecaller. Adrian put it there 2 turns ago. And here's the Gear Hulk. It'll target negate. The Planeswalker's negated. 2 more mana up for Adrian. He may have just turned the corner there. Bernard has no cards in hand. And Adrian is going to get to untap his lands. 3 clue tokens. 10 lands in play. Bernard's come very close, but these last 2 points seem so far away. And here's Metallurgic Summonings from Adrian. It's the card that won him the first game.
Should do a good job of closing this one too, though he already just has 10 power on the battlefield.
Yeah, Tireless Tracker will swing for 5. Looks like Bernard will take the hit, go to 15. And with 4 mana up, Adrian Sullivan will pass the turn.
If he has a commit to memory or a disallow in his hand, you can call this one over. If Bernard casts a spell, you counterspell that, get a 3 or 4 power token, crack those clues. Scrappy Scrounger can't block. Adrian is setting up for a lethal attack. He has the Lumbering Falls already, actually, so that is worth that power. So cracking those clues plus firing up the Lumbering Falls, that is the opportunity to close here. He did not crack any clues at end step there, likely suggesting that he does have a 3 or 4 mana counterspell in his hand, or at least representing that, making Bernard think about that in case his card is Affazin.
At 15. Doesn't have lethal just yet. It's very close.
If he fired up Lumbering Falls and cracked 2 clues, they would be lethal, but it would take all of his mana.
He had no reason to do that.
Right. If he's not cracking clues end step, he's certainly not doing that main phase.
Here's a swing for 5 from Sullivan. It'll knock Bernard down to 10 life. So close here. Toolcraft Exemplar will be the play. Bernard holding 1 card as a bluff, but it's a land. Adrian's going to crack clues, it looks like. Actually, he's going to Essence Scatter.
That's good for a 2/2, but that 1/1
he
doesn't
just decides
matter.
he doesn't even Essence Scatter. He's going to Harness Lightning it. Much better. Wants the Essence Scatter for Avacyn, the Harnessed Lightning for the Exemplar. There's not even an Avacyn there. Adrian's going to crack some clues, and he's going to walk this one in. Scrap Heap Scrounger cannot block. We're looking at 6 from the Tracker, 5 from the Gear Hulk. That's 11. Never mind the 2/2 construct. This is going to be the game, the match, and the top 8 for Adrian Sullivan. A perfect 7-0 here on Saturday.
Heck of a day.
And the Teamer control deck that was problematic yesterday, no problems today. Adrian will be in the top 8, and tomorrow he'll get to bring his undefeated Lantern deck into the elimination rounds.
Yeah, coming off of winning 3 games in a row with this deck and in impressive fashion. To be fair, Bernard's game 1 was not exactly executing the way that the Marty Vehicles deck would generally want to,